Hello, hello, hello. Hola, hola, hola. Welcome to a new episode of the Yoga for All Bodies video podcast. Today, I'm so excited to speak with Ivan Soroka. He's a certified yoga therapist, educator, and author of Yoga Therapy for Diabetes. Diagnosed with type 1 diabetes in her teens and chronic musculoskeletal issues throughout her life, Ivan practices and teaches us yoga as a health-providing tool. Her vision is to empower and inspire autonomy in self-care, specializing in diabetes, chronic illness, pain management, and respiratory fitness. Hello, hello.
Hi, hola, hola.
Hola, hola. I'm so excited to speak with you today. I love your work. So needed, so interesting. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on. I love talking about this work. So I'm chatting with people that love to talk about yoga and all these kinds of things. So I'm excited.
Yay. So I would like to know, first question, how did yoga came to your life?
Well, yoga came to my life when I was 16. I had been living with diabetes, type 1 diabetes, for about 3 years. And I was really having a hard time managing it. Diabetes is so much more than taking insulin and eating the right food. There's a huge psycho-emotional component and energetic component. And I was really struggling. And I had a friend go to yoga, and I saw how it had changed her, like her whole being had changed from just one class. And when you're 16, anything your friends do is what you want to do. So I decided to go. And I think what was unique is I didn't go with her. I went by myself. I decided to go and I went by myself. And I had no idea what I experienced, but I knew that I liked it. I felt more and more at ease, more and more myself. I was responding to diabetes better. I was accepting my body better. Does that make sense? Like, it was just this feeling of like integration and wholeness that continually grew upon itself the more I practiced. So that's how I found yoga. Yeah.
Amazing. And what style was it?
I think for a lot of people, it's like this. It was hot yoga. I started going to like Bikram, hot yoga. It's what we had up here in the mountains in, 2001.
Amazing. And what happened there? What made you decide, okay, I want to be a yoga teacher?
Well, I was obsessed. Like, I ate, slept, lived yoga. I went to classes twice a day. I was in college at the time, and I don't want to say I was like relying on it, but I think I was in many ways relying on it as a means for being healthy, but also like keeping my mind relaxed and getting through school and doing it really well. And there was a training. I went to school at CU Boulder, and I was part of one of the first core power yogas. Now there's like so many of them, but I was part of one of the first ones. And it was like their second training ever at the Boulder studio. And I went through their training. They were offering it, and I said, well, I just want to be good at whatever I do, and I just wanted to take it to the next level. So that was how I started. My journey was like with a 200-hour training program, and they asked me to start teaching right away. So I was like thrown right into it. I was still in college, and I was teaching yoga, like 6 a.m. classes for like $20.
Oh, yes.
That's how it is. You gotta pay your dues, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Amazing. And now I know you are a yoga therapist.
Yeah.
So what's the difference between yoga by itself, and yoga therapy?
Yoga by itself and yoga therapy. Well, I guess it's an easy and it's also a big question. Yoga, let's just say in general, the purpose of yoga, or the whole point of yoga, is kaivalya, right? It's freedom, right? Regardless of whatever type of modality that you're practicing, yoga is about creating health, but ultimately freedom from suffering, so that we can shine in our unique capacity. The only difference between yoga and yoga therapy is that yoga therapy takes everything that yoga provides and it applies it to an individual, the individual, or a specific group.
Amazing.
So what that could include are asana practices, pranayama practices, meditations, yoga nidra, visualization, so many different things, but uniquely provided to the person to help them reduce suffering, to improve whatever you want to call it, physical fitness, mental fitness, to use it as a health providing tool, but still that the ultimate aim is kaivalya.
Love it. Love it, love it, love it.
Yeah.
And I love how you really say that it's for an individual. And also the amount of study is different.
Yes.
Yes.
A lot more study.
Yes, because with a 200-hour, you can go and teach your vinyasa, teach everything, but to become a yoga therapist, it's years.
Yeah, it took me about five years. Pretty rigorous.
Mm-hmm. So this is no joke.
It's no joke. It's true though. I always tell people that, when they're asking me or they start inquiring about working with me, I do. It's no joke.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. But you
That's
also
why
have a lot of time in yourself.
Yes.
Like a lot of time into understanding anatomy and understanding all the different types of practices. That's why I don't think we can ever stop learning.
Absolutely. Yes. I love learning too. Amazing. And you were mentioning that the objective is to eliminate the suffering and to, I will say it in my own words, like live your best life with what you have, with what life gave you.
Yeah.
So how can yoga help people living with chronic illness, with diabetes? What can you share about that?
Yoga gives people hope. It gives people hope and a renewed sense of confidence. There's nothing more challenging than when it seems like everything you know to be true is failing you, especially your health. And often we try diligently to improve upon things, but yet we miss the mark. And that's what a lot of living with a chronic illness is you try really hard and still it's not enough, or you're still dealing with stuff that's happening. And so yoga gives us hope and confidence because a practice can help us feel better when we need. It can influence change, whether that's physically feeling like we feel better in our bodies, or mentally, and we can say that there's a very fine line between the mental side and the physical side of things, right? They're very much connected. But at the end of the day, for me, what yoga does is it helps me return to a feeling of like I'm home within myself, that it doesn't matter what happens, with my body. Like I live with diabetes, but I have like chronic disc herniations over the years, and I've had to deal with a lot of like musculoskeletal issues, and that at times is almost like more challenging. Because once you've got your diabetes. I mean, diabetes is, don't get me wrong, like I'm not going to say that it's easy by any means, but physical pain is really, really challenging because it's like, it's always there. It's always there. So you can have a practice that provides you with a sense of wholeness, integration, and peace. And that gives you hope and the confidence that you can get up the next day and you can just continue, you know? That's what I think it does on a very simple level.
Simple level, but super deep.
Exactly. Simple is the most complex too.
Yes, yes. And thank you for sharing that, and also sharing your story. Because I know, for example, I don't have someone, maybe a sister, my mother, that is living with diabetes. So sometimes we only hear that they inject insulin, and that's it. So if you are able to share with us, or if you want to share with us, how does an everyday life living with therapy with diabetes looks like?
I think to start the conversation is to say that diabetes has two central types. Type 1 diabetes, which is an autoimmune condition, which is characterized by an inability to produce insulin. So typically you hear like a type 1 diabetic is insulin dependent. People with type 1 diabetes have to take insulin. And type 2 diabetes, which is also a chronic illness characterized by insulin resistance. And there's many different forms of treatment for type 2 diabetes, from different types of medications, diet, lifestyle modifications. But the central component for both is that diabetes is relentless and it impacts people on every level of their life. Every aspect of their life is impacted by diabetes. And I think that's what makes it so complex, is that it's not enough to just take medicine. It requires people to have a very intimate connection with themselves and with the illness itself. And so everyone arrives upon any type of diagnosis with a unique personality and history, right? And so it reveals itself, or it manifests itself uniquely in everyone. So I can't say that the way that type 1 diabetes is in me is going to be the same in someone else, just as the same with type 2. It's very unique and it's personalized, and that's in many ways why yoga is such a great adjunct or a complementary practice for people with diabetes, because it helps them not only tune into themselves better, but to tune into the movement of diabetes, because diabetes is not static. It changes. Our blood sugars change, our hormones change, how well we respond to insulin changes. So many different factors are impacting how, and I put my fingers into asterisks, control, because there's really not like a control. It's like how well, or seemingly well, that we're navigating diabetes, which is basically some type of dysfunction in our metabolism for processing glucose and producing insulin, which is the major hormone that helps us to absorb glucose from our bloodstream. So that's just a very, I guess, simple, but description of what diabetes is. But there's a lot that goes into it. You know, I think there's a lot of stigma involved with diabetes. People don't understand it. And for a lot of people, they hide it. You know, studies show that the more prevalent or the more obvious diabetes is, meaning like I have to wear devices on my body, like, so they're always showing that there's a higher perception of stigma, but also for people that are challenged, that have like a higher BMI index, that are, you know, it's just going to be more stigma that's involved, because people feel like, I say the general consensus of those who don't understand diabetes is that the person with diabetes is at fault, right? That they created it because of their lifestyle, but there are so many different genetic factors, environmental factors, and lifestyle factors that are responsible. And I think for a lot of people, they carry this weight of like, I'm at fault for this, or parents do for their children. And so I think the more that we can spread awareness, and that's why I love talking about this, and partly why I wrote a book on it as well, is the more we can spread awareness about it, it's going to continue to renew this sense of confidence in people who are living with it, that it's not the end of the world, and that you can use the challenge as like a platform to be so much better at everything.
Yes. And thank you for sharing that and saying this. Mm-hmm. That's why I love bringing to this video podcast people that know firsthand what it's living with something. Because totally agree. For example, I live with chronic migraine and chronic vertigo. So I can relate with all this, like not wanting to say it because maybe you're going to be treated differently.
Yeah.
And how much is your fault, because the society makes you believe that it's your fault and that you are at fault for saying no to some things. So thank you for sharing that. Yes.
Yes.
And you mentioned that you wrote your book. Yes. So I would like to know, how was that process? What is the book about? Give all the details.
Okay. So I published a book early this year in 2021. It's called Yoga Therapy for Diabetes. And I created a manual of sorts for anyone that is either a yoga therapist, yoga teacher, they can be a holistic provider, even doctor, or even a person with diabetes who wants to understand how to apply integrative practices for a person living with any type of diabetes. So it is, like I said, a manual, because we go into rigorous detail about the biology of diabetes, of stress, and how these things are all tied in together, and also weaving this in a lot with Ayurveda. I source so much of my work from Ayurveda because I feel that it helps to create the pathway for us to be able to view and to understand diabetes and ourselves from this place of like being established in nature, and how nature is always impacting us, and those central qualities are alive in everything. So it really helps, I think, for many people get out of their heads and really into their bodies to feel what's going on with their blood sugars, with maybe any emotional distress that they're experiencing because of diabetes and beyond. So it has a big part to do with Ayurveda, as well as yoga philosophy. As I said at the beginning of this podcast, ultimately, regardless of yoga therapy being a health providing tool, the goal is to promote freedom, personal freedom, and to be able to fulfill our dharma, right? And so the book details the major challenges that people with diabetes face, from the physical burden of like blood sugars and how to use practices as intervention strategies to help them if they're dealing with insulin resistance, for example, help people recover energetically after hypoglycemia, which is low blood sugar, because people with diabetes who take insulin have a risk of getting low blood sugars. As I started this video, actually, you saw me chugging juice and eating glucose tubs. My blood sugar was getting low. So it's a constant balancing act. And then other things like neuropathy and then mental health. People with diabetes, both type 1, type 2, are 50% more likely to develop clinical anxiety and depressive disorders. So how to start to work with these things and also to shed light on them. And the process of the book was really about like taking my own life and the experience I've had working with people with diabetes over the last 10 years and thinking about how we could construct that for someone who wants to know more. And it was a crazy process. I mean, writing a book is no joke, and everyone tells you it is, no joke, and everyone finds their own process with it. I have always loved writing, but I would never have considered myself to be like a writer. So when I had this opportunity, I just had to start. And that's what you're going to hear from a lot of people is just start writing. And I had a rough outline of what I wanted to do, but I just wrote every day. And sometimes, it was an hour or two. Sometimes it was like 12 hours, which was insane. But it took me about 8 months. I mean, it's a hefty book. And I basically stopped everything. I was actually blessed because COVID happened when I was in the final 3 months of my deadline. So I was able to stop everything I was doing and dedicate 100% of myself to finishing the book. So it's a labor of love. And it's like having a baby, you have this baby and then you just let it out into the world. And it's really been amazing to see how it's been impacting people and also people that are working with diabetes as well.
Absolutely. I read the reviews and I was impressed. Number one, representation matters.
Yeah.
So I think people were waiting for someone to say firsthand, this is what living with diabetes and how yoga can change you, can provide tools for support. Love it. And they're saying that it's super useful. So amazing. I already ordered it. Haven't read it, I must say, but I ordered it.
Yes.
Yes. And even more after reading the reviews. Yes. So needed. One more time. Yes. So I mean, I'm going to write you when I read it, but I can absolutely tell by the feedback that it is a work from the heart. And I'm a firm believer when we share something from the heart, not because we want to become famous or for other reasons, that translates.
It does. It does. It brings so much more joy into the process, right? Because what's your intention? What's your goal with anything? For a lot of people, maybe it is, and that's fine. But for me, I've always been motivated by what my heart says. And I don't want to say to a fault, but it definitely is what's guided me. And it's like I said, it's a labor of love. And I hope that for people who are watching this that end up getting the book and reading it, if you have diabetes, if you want to work with people with diabetes, that it's going to help you understand on a much more intimate level how to work from that space of the heart as well with your condition, right? And really breathe that sense of compassion. I have a lot of compassion for chronic illness.
And as yoga teachers, the more we know about the human experience will make us better teachers. I'm so sad when I get messages from people telling me, I tried to go to this class, but they told me, no, that they didn't have the tools to help me. Or if something happened, they wouldn't know what to do with me. No.
Yeah.
Tools, knowledge, yes.
Exactly. And we can empower people on an individual level, and then that creates a community, right? Like the community you're creating, like the community I'm creating. There's something so wonderful when people who have felt so alone are able to unite together and realize that they're not alone and that their experience is not unique, right? Again, hope and confidence.
Yes, yes, yes. For example, when I started teaching, even though when I did my first 200 hours, I was already living with my chronic migraine, I didn't want it to say. And when I started teaching, I pushed through the days of horrible migraine. One day, I finished a class and I went to the bathroom and I threw up because of the pain. Yeah, horrible. Now I don't do that anymore. Now I normalize. So I learned that it's super normal to stand up in front of your students and say, today I'm dealing with vertigo. So today I'm going to teach from my chair.
Yes.
And the first time I said it, my voice was shaking. I was afraid because we have all this judgment from society. But no, community matters.
Community matters, and creating a safe space where you as a teacher can say that too. I think there's something to say about, I say we, like as teachers, because I know I've experienced this myself, like with my body and my disc problems as well, like feeling that I have to pretend that everything's okay. And it's as simple as saying, actually, I can still be here, but I can't do that. I'm going to sit from my chair today. And that no one's going to judge you for it. And it's okay. It's okay.
We judge ourselves.
Yeah.
And how does one of your classes look like? What can someone expect if they are watching this interview and they say, I'm going to try?
Well, okay. So my main teacher is Gary Kraftsell with American Vinny Yoga Institute, and I am a breath-centric teacher. So Gary's teacher was Desikachar, and Desikachar was the son of Krishnamacharya, who he taught in the latter stages of his life, yoga therapy, and a big focus is on the breath and using breath as like the palette that we're creating this beautiful painting from, right? It's all the different colors from our breath create how we're moving our body, how we're influencing our nervous system uniquely, how we're invoking certain qualities and questions. So the primary thing is that classes with me depend on the emphasis. Some of them will be more physical if our focus is on something more physical. They can be more subtle, and they're always highly energetic. So expect that you're going to be like vibrating after a class with me. I love the practices of yoga nidra, and I am a daily meditator. Meditation is probably the main part of my personal practice. So I feel that almost every practice in some way, it's oriented like we would orient towards a peak posture. It's oriented towards some type of depth of stillness, whether that's a deep supine relaxation, or if that's a seated meditation. I also love to bring into practice svadhyaya, like so bringing these questions to light, like asking ourselves potent questions about, what are our obstacles, what's going on, looking at ourselves on a more deeper level. I think that it's essential, and I think that it's a big missing link, and perhaps it's a missing link because a lot of people aren't necessarily qualified to be directing classes in this direction yet. I was not ready when I was just after my 200 hour and a few years into practice. I didn't have that comfort or a sense of command to be able to do that. But now I want to try to count in my head how many years it's been. It's been since 2001, right? So it's been a while. 20 years of practice that has become a big part of how I teach is giving people a space to really reflect. And I feel that yoga without reflection, it has a shelf life to it. But when we start reflecting and using ourselves as the source of inspiration, then it really is the life practice that we're looking it to be.
Absolutely. Yes, yes, yes. If not, it's other thing, other type of movement, call it whatever you want to call it, but it's not yoga.
Yeah, it's not yoga. Exactly.
Amazing. And finally, how can people find you? Give all the information, how they can get the book, everything.
Well, first off, you can get the book on Amazon. It's Yoga Therapy for Diabetes. You can also get it on my publisher's website, Singing Dragon Books. My website is Soroka, Soroka, yogatherapy.com. And there you can find all about the work I do with yoga therapy. I do yoga therapy for diabetes, but I also do general yoga therapy, work with all different types of chronic conditions, as well as performance and those kinds of things. So virtually and in person up here in Colorado in the mountains. And I have some training programs. I actually have a teacher training program coming up in the spring. So if you want to find out about that, it's coming up. And hopefully I have a teacher training program for the diabetes soon. Word is, I can't announce it. There's something coming up. So check that out. There's going to be a teacher training coming up with that, but it's not quite announced yet. And I'm on Instagram at Evan_Soroka. So there you can find it. Most of my Instagram stuff is like all diabetes. And so that would be the best way to connect and just get a sense of what's going on. But I am on a social media break right now. I'm taking the whole month off. I really needed a breather, and then I'll be able to come out with some really nice, fresh content.
Absolutely. So, you have all the information. Thank you so much for sharing your passion, your work. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And if you're watching this video, like it, share it, subscribe, because this is a message everybody needs to know. Yoga really is for everybody. Yes, yes, yes. A big hug. We stay in contact. A big hug in your homes. And see you in a new episode of the Yoga for All Bodies video podcast. Bye.